Joining us now, she is, of course, one of the greatest of all time in the sport, an Olympian, certainly a National Player of the Year, now a broadcaster in her second year doing national color commentary at ESPN. She'll be doing games on SEC Network this weekend. We'll be calling the Ole Miss South Carolina series with Roy Philpott on Saturday and on Sunday. We speak with our friend Monica Abbott, joins us back here on In the Circle at D1 Softball. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me back on. And spring is in the air. We're in the month of April, full on softball season here for all these teams. It's one of my favorite times of the year.
And what a series you've got to work on. You've been busy. We'll get to some of the games you've already done. You've done Kansas, Missouri. You did just finish doing Ole Miss, Missouri on Monday night. We saw you there on Mic'd Up Monday there. Now you get this top 25 matchup with two of the best stories right now, not only in the SEC, but in the country with Ole Miss and then South Carolina. You're excited. You're talking to you off the air. We were excited about this matchup. What has stood out to you? You've already seen Ole Miss, and now you'll get to see firsthand what Ashley Chastain Woodard is doing over there in South Carolina at her alma mater.
Yeah, I'm excited about this weekend. Ole Miss versus South Carolina. It's going to be a great series, and both of these teams have some underlying storylines that are really cool. Like obviously, Ashley Chastain Woodard coming over from Charlotte, and South Carolina is her alma mater, which is so cool that she's the head coach there now. But really turning around that program, all the transfers that she brought with her from Charlotte, just being able to lead that team from the offensive standpoint. They're going to lead with the bats. And I just think they've kind of shocked a lot of people on how well they've done so far. And I can't wait to see how they continue through the rest of this season and especially versus Ole Miss.
What jumped out to you about Ole Miss, seeing them live? You got to go to Oxford because I know Coach Traxel with the renovations, the new stadium look there. What jumped out at you about Ole Miss seeing him live?
Yeah, Ole Miss in the past couple years, Ole Miss has been that team in the SEC that they're getting into postseason play because they're in the SEC. And I think they finally got tired of it and were like, no, we don't want to be that team that just, relies on our conference to get in. I want to get into mayhem. I want to get into mayhem because I deserve to be here. And you can see that in the way they're playing. So many good players. Lexi Brady has just having a career year, has turned over her batting average almost 150 plus points. But Ole Miss, they have a new stadium, but they also have three brand new coaches, lots of new transfers, new freshmen. They just have so many new vibes. And I think it's just a revitalized program. And in my opinion, they're kind of floating under the radar a little bit on the national scene because there is so many good stories out there in softball right now.
No, that's a great point. They got great young, talented freshman pitcher. I'm sure you were impressed with there. You're right. They got some pieces, and I feel like everybody in the SEC has raised their game. Of course, Oklahoma, Texas joining the league, so it's a supersized SEC league. But in talking to a lot of the coaches, Monica, and I think you get the sense there too that everybody realizes, hey, we're raising the bar here with OU and Texas, but we're as good as everybody, and they're the top conference right now in college softball.
Yeah, there's so many good games throughout it, and you've heard it, you've seen it. Multiple teams in the top 10, multiple teams in the top 25. But I think the SEC, it's like not forgiving. Like it is not forgiving. If you don't play clean defense, like you're probably not going to win. And so many of these games in these series are going down to game three, right? Who's going to win game three? It's going to be a dogfight. Who's going to win that to win the series? And that's why we're seeing so many close games or games that are won in the fifth or sixth inning rather than series sweeps.
No doubt. And certainly Ole Miss, South Carolina's big implications, hosting implications, everything. You was a big part of helping build the SEC with your Tennessee teams going back to that '07 year. And the SEC was building and building and chasing the Pac-10 and Pac-12 at the time. What's it like now to see, as you're doing SEC games, to see the SEC at the top of the sport?
It's incredible. And when I went to Tennessee, I was from the West Coast, so I had a lot of experience seeing, those top pack teams at that time, the Pac-10 or Pac-12, formerly RIP, RIP. Those schools, right? I saw their stadiums, I saw their athletes, I knew a lot of them. But when you went to the SEC, I think the biggest difference is the investment, right? And I see you saw the investment in women's sports, you saw the investment in the sport of softball, and I think that was ideal for me being a female athlete. But now they've taken it to a higher, just a higher level, right? Like uh, Ole Miss opens a new stadium, Tennessee's revamping a stadium. Alabama, I would say their stadium is very nice, but it's getting to the point where it's almost like that really cool historic stadium, like the Chicago Cubs in the
Yeah.
SEC. So, LSU has a beautiful stadium. So the SEC, they just put this investment into women's sports, but especially into the sport of softball. And that's why it's the best conference in the country. And that's why it just means more.
Oh, there you go. You got the slogan down, Pat, there.
Got it
So
in there.
you got it in there. You're making the rounds there with the league. Of course, this is year 2 now for you broadcasting nationally. Last year, you made your debut. You got to call that wild regional in Missouri, where Omaha was the story, nearly getting to the super regional. Missouri had to come out of the losers bracket to win that regional. What did you learn from last year's experience that you've applied to this year now as you enter your second year?
Being an analyst is two things. You want to call the game, right? And give justice and glorify your athletes and the plays on the field. But you also got to be a little bit honest on some of those mistakes or things that didn't happen because that's the game, right? Like you can't sugarcoat some of those mistakes. Sometimes you got to be honest in a nice way.
Right.
So being more comfortable saying some of those is really important because it helps tell the story. It tells the story of, hey, this team has had 10 people left on base. They've been struggling with this all season long. This is why they're down right now 2-0 because in the first 5 innings, they've had 4 people left on base. So you have to be able to tell those facts in in the way that uplifts the game. And yeah, it's been really fun. Softball's not an easy sport, so we always got to remember that for the athletes. But I've really enjoyed being back in the booth.
I bet, and you seem more comfortable this year. You did the Kansas Missouri game, midweek on ESPNU. You did the Ole Miss year. You feel more comfortable because I remember last year you were kind of still trying to figure it out on the five. We're always broadcasters. You're always going to try to figure it out. No matter how many games, how many years you do it, you're always trying to figure it out. But you feel more comfortable. It seems like from the outside anyway. You feel more comfortable now being in the booth, talking to your fellow play-by-play, whether it's Chucky Kemp or who you've been working with, or Roy Philpott you'll get to broadcast with this weekend. You feel more, it sounds like you're more comfortable this year than maybe you were early last year. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, thank you. I definitely am more comfortable, and I think it's hard to put all the things that you want to say, both educational for the game and also entertainment value, and also just read the game within 30 seconds. So that can be difficult, and I think I struggled a little bit with that at times last year. But I feel a lot more confident in being able to express what I have to say to the audience better this year.
What's it been like doing conference calls with coaches and players? Do they like, hey, do they get like start like, especially when you do players, do they get starstruck about you? Because I texted you when you did the cans, like Jennifer McFalls, who I've had on the show. I like talking to Coach McFalls, but she'd be the first to say, not the biggest fan of maybe doing in-game interviews, but you got her to open up because you've known her and things. So what has that interaction been like with you, with coaches and players getting to talk to you and you talking to them?
Yeah, I just want to make the coaches comfortable, right? And I think there's a mutual respect there because a lot of these coaches followed my career and they saw me not only compete in college, but for Team USA and internationally. So they know the level of my softball brain is really, really high. And then also just being real with them and being like, hey, like, I just got to know for my softball self, like, what were you thinking in this situation? And being able to tell them the things that I love that they're doing really well and like what do you think is the key for the rest of your season moving forward, for you guys to pull off some big wins, things like that. Just letting them lead the conversation, but also helping them give us stuff to uplift their program. Because at the end of the day, there in the booth as an analyst talking about them on TV or for the app, all those things. And my biggest goal is like, I want to uplift your program. Like, let's
Sure.
talk, tell me the things that are going to help your recruits. Tell me the things that are going to, why is your athlete so successful? How did you develop them? And I can share that sort of information without giving away your secrets on how you win. And if I can do that, then there's a good level of trust between the coaches and the TV.
I'm curious, do they pick your brain when you talk to them? Because I'm sure they're trying to figure some things out about their team. They might ask you for some thoughts. Do you get some questions sometimes from them from time to time?
I would say no.
Oh wow. Well, they're not.
Not
Well, they
not
should.
really. Not really.
Oh, see.
Sometimes they'll lead in with like, hey,
Ah,
Monica, you understand what this is like and why she's struggling with getting first pitch strikes or something like
that's
that.
right.
And then
That's right.
it's like they're not asking a question, but they're like, the struggles of this. Like
The part, yeah. We're like the play-by-play guy's like, yeah, oh, okay, I get it. We're not part of, yeah. I know that. I know that question, that segment very well. But that's that connection because you can
yes,
relate to them, and I think
yes.
that's the thing that you bring to the table. They know like you've got the credentials and you understand what they're going through from a positive and a negative standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like how hard it is, right? Like it's just hard and you have to manage so many different things as a head coach, and you have to be good at so many different things in in the game, right? You can't just have one facet of the game be good and try to beat a ranked opponent. Like you have to pitch, you have to hit, you have to play defense. And if you don't have all three of those, then you're not going to win against a good team. Now, sometimes if you're lucky, you can do two really, really well.
That's
You can
true.
do two of the three really well and still win. But they know ultimately you got to do three better than the other team, better than your opponent.
How much do you go into and you think about, hey, I'm looking at certain mechanics of a pitcher, for example. Am I
Mm.
going to analyze that a lot versus, hey, you know what? No, maybe I'm not going to go more mechanical. I might just go more of a mindset. How much of that goes through your mind as you're analyzing what you're watching as it registers to you? How much of it comes to you naturally like, ooh, I've noticed something mechanically. I want to talk about that, or maybe there's a situation there from a mindset standpoint you're thinking as a pitcher.
Yeah, when I see pitchers in the game, it depends on where they are in the game. So let's talk just real simple. First inning, a pitcher comes in. I don't think people and fans realize like how hard the first inning is for pitchers to kind of
Yes.
settle in. So a lot of games are won and lost in the first inning. So it's really important for a pitcher to settle in. So in that aspect, I'd talk more mindset. Now, if a pitcher's rocking and rolling and then all of a sudden, they're throwing fire and then all of a sudden they kind of lose it, then we might talk a little bit of mechanical on what happened if it's a consistent thing. But from a pitcher standpoint, you don't want to constantly think about the one thing you keep doing wrong. You got to like try to switch the flip and you got to try to make a switch for that next pitch to be good again because you don't get a chance to work on a pitch in a game, right? Like you have to be able to switch it and adjust your mechanics and form right away. So sometimes it's obvious and you can tell mid game, but sometimes pitchers might struggle one or two pitches and then they switch it. And it's not really something that we need to go into detail on because they're able to make that switch.
One thing I've also noticed about you this year, you've picked up on the replay. Like, when the replay is coming, that, hey, I got to analyze what just happened and why it just happened. How are you feeling about doing the replay part of it? Because that's sometimes that when you first start doing that, you forget, you get caught up in the moment in the games like that. But are you feeling more comfortable analyzing there on a replay here, kind of like most of the analysts do?
Yeah, I really like doing the replays. It's been a lot of fun. One of the biggest challenges for me, but I've been able to work with the producers on was if the hitter got a good hit, but then their play on defense went wonky.
Yeah.
And trying to talk about both things at the same time, but working with the producers on being able to separate those into two different replays on why, why the hit was so good, but hey, the outfielder bobbled the ball at the wall and that allowed her to get an extra base. And being able to talk through both of those scenarios separately instead of putting them into one larger replay.
Well, that's one thing I've noticed too, even in the 2 years. You are able to talk about it from a hitter's perspective, because sometimes when a pitcher does analyst work, you're thinking, oh, they're just coming from the pitcher's perspective. But you've been able to talk from a hitter standpoint. Where did that come from, being able to kind of give the hitter's perspective? Because you were not a hitter, when you play. But at the same time, I know, I've talked to Coach Cindy Ball Malone, who you know very well. She was a two-way player. She ran the offense for a while from a pitcher's mindset. So I'm kind of curious, when you talk about the hitting side, where does that come from?
Yeah, well, I hit 1 year for 1 full year in college and then finished my sophomore year. But honestly, the hitting part, sorry people, but I struck out so many hitters.
You did.
I struck out so many people that eventually I figured out what they were doing wrong.
That's fair. No, that's a great point. So you do it from the pitcher's
how they were going to get out before they knew how they were going to get out.
Right now, there's a lot of players.
I'm not trying to be like cocky or anything like that. It's just when you've seen it so many times, it's at times you can read the situation before it actually happens.
I think there's a lot of players right now, people that played against you that's listening to this are like nodding. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
you got pretty fair deal there. I'm curious, has broadcasting to some extent replaced that rush that you had when you were playing? Because you weren't sure. I remember I asked you last year, you weren't sure how you would feel in the booth and how it would compare to when you're playing. There's always that rush as a player, that excitement that comes when you're a player. Do you have butterflies? Do you get nervous? Do you get excited when you're before a broadcast? And does it come anywhere close to it being as a player?
Well, there's nothing like being a softball player. The thrill of the beginning of the game, the butterflies at the beginning to like them coming back in a close game in the bottom of the seventh, the excitement, the energy of your teammates. There's nothing like that. But I do enjoy being able to see it in other people now and being able to talk about those emotions and managing those emotions. And that part's really fun. I do. And call me a softball nerd if you want. Like I love the game and it's fun to talk about. And I want everyone else to have fun listening to it.
Tennessee is not allowed as the answer to this, because that would be the obvious answer. But is there a ballpark you would like to call a game at some point in your career?
Well, I think that first answer would be, Oklahoma City, the Women's College World Series.
Okay, yeah, pretty good.
That would be ideal. I don't think I'm there yet, but maybe one day I'll be good enough to.
That's true. You got Oklahoma City. You got Oklahoma, the new ballpark at Love's Field now. Everybody's raving about that.
Yeah, Love's Field. I always played really well at LSU, so I almost want to go.
Tiger Park. Okay.
I always played really well there, even in the pros. We had some championship series that were hosted at Tiger Park. So I think that would be fun just because I had a lot of really good memories there. For some stadiums you thrive in.
I hear you. Yeah, you got the new Tiger Park. I don't think you've been. Have you been to the? Oh yeah, you did. You played there in the pros there. You're right. You had good times there. That's a good point. Good callback on that. I've heard good things about that one. Let me ask you about somebody that you know very well, is Karlyn Pickens, because she helped bring you in the news somehow, because in her Monday night game against Arkansas, she got clocked at 78 miles an hour, which apparently is the fastest a pitch that any softball pitcher has thrown since you were apparently clocked a few years back at 77 miles an hour. When did you first catch wind of this with the whole Pickens? Did you watch it live? Were you found out after the fact? Take me through that, because That was kind of unique there. Everybody, it kind of got social media on a buzz after they when that happened.
Yeah, it was so fun. Like social media in the softball world was lit on fire because of that. Very, very fun. I think the baseball world was very hyper aware of it too, which was cool. I was watching the game, so I saw it live and in person, and I was like, "Whoa, that looked really fast." And then the announcers picked it up later, and I saw they announced it after the game, and just honestly, I'm super excited for Karlyn Pickens to be able to have reached 78. I personally think like she's still got more in her. Come on, light us up again. Light us up again. Do it again. Do it again.
That's too funny.
When I was trying to hit 70, I wasn't trying to hit 77. At the time, I was throwing 75 pretty consistently, which was in the pros and averaging 73 to 75 miles per hour. Not a lot of our games were clocked. And I just kind of had this internal goal of, hey, I wonder if I can hit 80. And I put it on, my vision board and my goal list and like, let's put it on there and just see what happens. And it was one of those things, shoot for the moon, land in the stars. And I ended up at 77 when everything was right. Like people don't understand that when you are throwing that fast and having that much of an explosive movement on a pitch or through your body, explosive movement through your body, there's a lot of things that have to go right. Not only sequencing and timing from the pitching standpoint, form and mechanics, all of those things, but also a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of in the moment. So a lot of those pieces have to come together to happen. And you got to be feeling good. You're probably not going to do it on game 2 of a doubleheader. I don't know. You could, but there's a lot of like situations there that have to kind of align to be able to throw 78. And it was so fabulous and fantastic to see. And I just hope she continues to hit 78 and that we're there recording that pitch speed every time, because we know that just a matter of time with her youth and her strength that it's not impossible that she might hit 79 this season.
When you throw a pitch that hard and fast, do you know it when you throw it and it leaves your hand, or does it feel no different than when you throw 74, for example?
No, you kind of know like when
Really?
you kind of know when you bring it. Like there's a difference between 70 and 75. And I would explain it as when I threw my fastest pitch and my front foot landed, you could feel the power transfer through your core. You could feel it like vibrate through your core and into your hand. And then, you just like whip it through, right? Like, because all of a sudden, all that power and speed come together and create this explosive movement. And how's it going to get there, right? You're in this K position. It's got to get there through your core, and it comes out, and you're like, wow, that was cool. Don't feel that every day.
So you feel really good at that point. Obviously, you're feeling like pretty good there. Does that impact what pitch you throw next? Do you have to throw something different just so you can catch yourself? Can you throw hard again? What's that like? You throw something like 77. How are you feeling for the next pitch there? Because that's what's always fascinated me about that.
Yeah, gosh, yeah, it's not easy to throw it multiple times in a row, right? But I will say, if you start to throw it multiple times, and I think I even commented this on one of the posts that when she tied 77, like I knew she was going to break it with pretty relatively soon because she was throwing 77, multiple times in a game, 2 or 3 times in a game. So it was the more you throw your top speed, then it goes up. That's how you build speed. So for example, like you raise your average becomes a top, and then your top continues to level up that way. It's not the other way around. So you can't just throw 70 77 one time and then hope to hit 78. You got to be throwing 77 multiple times and then you'll hit 78.
Something that people have always have asked, and I'm kind of curious. So I'll ask you. You're the best person to ask about this. When do you know how hard you could throw? Like, is something that just as you get older? Is that something you know quickly as a youngster growing up? Take me through that development process, and then when do you go from being a thrower to a pitcher? Because there's sometimes some pitchers, you know this, they throw really hard, so they just think, hey, I'm just going to blow it past it, but that's not really pitching. You're just using struggle. You got to pitch to get these hitters out. So take me through that developmental process.
Yeah, the developmental process for a pitcher is a long one and it's a consistent one, right? So when you're young, it's really more about form mechanics. And then as you get into high school, I would say late middle school, early high school, it's about, that pitch development and finding your pitch, right? Like you're probably not going to be great at all five pitches. What are ideally your best college pitchers have three really good pitches. So what is it? Is it your rise ball? Is it your curve ball? Is it your drop ball? Is it your changeup? What is it? And then hopefully that'll take you to the next level to college. And then once you get to college, I think you're going to be under another coach. So there's like an adjustment there. And then I would say you're more of a thrower. And the reason is because for two things is one, a lot of college pitchers, they're not going to think through situations. They're not going to think about the minute details of, hey, this rise ball needs to be 3 inches higher or half a ball lower. The breaking point needs to be half a ball lower, or the angle to a righty, it needs to be sharper to this specific righty, right? So I would say they're more of a thrower because they're not as involved in that process. That process is done by their pitch caller, which in most cases in college right now is their pitching coach or their head coach, depending on which program you go to. And so it's more about being a little bit thoughtless and like staying in the moment, pitch to pitch, and not letting past pitches affect you or future pitches affect you in the college game. As you develop through college and you're able to think more through, hey, I've got to like spread the zone. I've got to spread the zone east-west, or I've got to spread north-south. And this hitter, I don't need to throw a changeup right now because this hitter is so late. It would put her on time. And you can start to foresee those things from pitches inside and at bat that you're throwing. And that's when you really become a pitcher, when you start to understand those intricacies and how your pitches pair. I think that's really underestimated. Can a pitcher throw, is it better for me as a pitcher to go change up first and then rise ball, or is it better for me as a pitcher to go rise ball first and then change up? And the way pitches pair really helps define you as a pitcher.
Yeah, I've talked to Karen Weekly. I've talked to Coach Bowman. I've talked to a lot of people that have worked with you and seen you in the bullpen, and they're mesmerized by your bullpen sessions just because you're working on everything. You're working on what pitches are working. You're working on your own mechanics. If something's off, something's not off. How does that? When do you grasp that? Like your own self. You don't need necessarily somebody else to help you when you know, hey, I'm off maybe here mechanically, or maybe this pitch isn't working on this day. I need to do this. Take me through that. When did you master that? If you're such a thing as master, I know every pitcher says you don't ever master it, which is kind of, but you're close to it. When do you know that okay, I know myself better than anybody on how to execute what I need to get done?
Yeah, so I think from a young age, when you're learning to pitch, middle school, high school, and you're learning to throw pitches, you understand pitching coaches really, and what I really believe is you got to start to get your athletes to understand what their body's doing, why it's working when it's good, and what's not doing the right thing when a pitch is not good. So when you think about going to college, you're being told what to do, right? You're being told like, hey, and a lot of times, which a lot of pitchers need, is the pitching coaches will come in and they'll like revamp you, right? They're going to revamp your pitches, revamp your form. Karlyn Pickens talks about it. Like her freshman year, she had to go in and revamp her mechanics, right? And because she did that, she was able to hit 78 and break a Guinness Book of World Records when she was a junior. But all that work was done as a freshman. So you kind of revamp that stuff, and that's when those pitching minds, those pitching coaches at the college level, which are very high, they can revamp you into taking your flaws, taking your not taking your best stuff and taking it to the next level and managing your flaws and saying, hey, this is okay that your glove flies out. We're okay with that, but you got to make sure you hit this. If your glove's going to fly out, you got to do this every time. And so that's where the pitching coaches really help manage the pitchers and bring the best out of them, right? But again, I would say once you leave college and you continue to play, that's when all of a sudden you don't have your consistent pitching coach that you grew up with, right? Because you've outgrown them probably. And you don't have your college pitching coach. So now the question is what do you really know about yourself? And do you know, not anyone can tell you how to do a drill, but do you know how to apply the drills? Do you know which drills to do and when you need them? And how are you going to design your bullpen to help you be successful in the game? And that doesn't mean like, hey, my bullpen on Thursday for my game on Friday, that starts, Tuesday, that starts preseason.
That's incredible. What's the most common question young pitchers ask you today?
It's going to be speed. Like everybody wants to throw harder. And that's why 78 is so impressive. And that is why the softball world lit up. And that's why, hey, like I made a living on throwing fire. Like I didn't really have a change up until late into my professional career. Okay. But people want to know two things, a successful change up and like how to throw harder. Because we know, and I say this, I think I said this on social media, is that the average college pitcher is going to throw 63, right? You're good college pitchers, you're competitive college pitchers, they're going to throw 65-ish, right? 65, 68 in that era. Okay? And then your top college pitchers are going to throw 70. Okay? And there's only a handful of college pitchers right now that are throwing 70 plus consistently. The majority of them are throwing, like I said, that 63. Okay. So 60 to 63. And that's okay. So a lot of our young athletes are trying to figure out, they know they have these college dreams. They want to go to Tennessee, they want to go to Oklahoma, they want to go to Ole Miss, they want to go to Michigan, whatever school they want to go to. They understand the fact like, hey, if I can reach 60, then I'm going to have a good chance to go to college. I'm going to have a good chance to have my, college dreams come true. They understand that. And I think that's awesome because we have put our game in that position where it is cool, where it is exciting, where it's fun to see how fast a pitcher can throw, what kind of movement a pitcher can put on the ball. So big dreams and goals out of there from our youth softball pitchers.
What impresses you the most about Karlyn Pickens, now seeing her and what she's doing?
One thing I love about Karlyn Pickens is just the energy that she brings, like after her big pitches and after big outs. Um, a little bit of envy because I feel like it's accepted in our game right now, right? Like you see the big
Yes.
moments, the big fist
Yeah,
pumps.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you see all of those and it's accepted in our game. And I love that because it brings a lot of fan love. It brings excitement. I want to see her do it over and over again because it makes me want to watch more, right? I'm looking for those big excitable moments, that raw emotion. When I was in college, it wasn't really accepted as much. So I was just like, yes, like straight face.
So you kept it under control. You kept it
Yeah,
kind of under.
you had to keep it under control,
I got you.
act like you've been here before, those sort of comments. And I love that athletes are able to play with their raw emotion more. It makes it fun and exciting to watch. I also think one thing Karlyn Pickens does really well, she mixes speeds really well, which is hard to do, especially when you're throwing like 75 plus all the time. Like you're not taking 10 miles an hour off, you're taking like 30. Okay. Like she's got to be down in the low 60s to, I would even say 50s, right? Like she has a nice changeup when it's on. It's really, really good. And I don't know the speed of her changeup offhand, but I think that is impressive that she's able to balance that with the speed.
Helps too. She's got Coach Weekly, and of course Megan Rose Smith, your teammate, former teammate. They're helping her out too. That's a big plus too, having those
Yeah.
two.
Yeah, she has a good support system at Tennessee.
Yeah, Megan's one of the best. I think it's underrated, kind of, because she knows every scenario, every situation. Seems to have that calm every time I've talked to her and just seen her do her job there. It seems she brings that calm that sometimes a pitcher needs when you're kind of things aren't going your way and during the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
You still, and that's the other thing I've noticed about you in broadcasting. You still enjoy watching these players, don't you? You would watch whether it's a great pitcher pitching or even the hitter. You still enjoy watching it as you're analyzing, but you still enjoy it, don't you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I mean, I love pitching and defense. Pitching and defense is my forte, but there's nothing like watching these good hitters. Um, Looking at like Brie Ellis, of course, from Arkansas and how people are attacking her or the strategy with her, but also Lexi Brady from Ole Miss, I'll see this weekend, Schumacher, Sierra Sacco. Like, there's a lot of really good athletes out there, and they're changing the game and how competitive they are in each at
Yes.
bat. And that little like strategy, the strategy at bat and pitch to pitch, it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Rhodey's another one like South Carolina. You
Yeah.
mentioned there. You got that others. It's going to be fun, and you'll be on the air this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. SEC Network. You and Roy Philpott, Old Miss and South Carolina. Top 25 showdown there. One of the marquee series of the weekend, and you'll be a part of it. Monica Abbott joining us here on In the Circle at D1 Softball. Listen, we could do this for hours, but you have a life. But hey, listen, this was a fun, and I'm glad you're still doing the broadcasting. You're having fun with it. Look forward to hearing you this weekend with Roy Philpott, who I'm going to give a shout out to. I've interviewed him during football season, so I'm excited to hear you and him talk softball. But thanks for always taking the time from your busy schedule to talk to us and offer some wisdom and expertise to the sport. Because I know there's a lot of people in our young audience that listens and they really listen to what you have to say and listen to your advice. So thank you for doing everything you do for the sport, and thanks for coming on with us here on In the Circle on D1 Softball.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.